somebody suggested to do a part 3 of why Lex is single. There's a running joke about this.
Yeah, why? But I can answer it in part, right?
Yeah.
Because, well, partially because you're very busy, partially because you've decided that until it's time, you're gonna wait until it's time. It's time, right? I mean, until it's time, you're waiting, and then I mean, you're not saving yourself for marriage, I don't think, but in some sense, yeah, your wife, your future wife, is out there.
Oh yeah, she's being programmed. No, I mean, I definitely believe that. I mean, first of all, I just love people, and I fall in love very easily with people, with objects, with things, with life, with every moment.
And that way, you're like Oliver Sacks. He would fall in love with minerals and concepts and things like that.
And so, like, to me, this kind of so relationship is more like a commitment to one particular kind of object of your love. Like it's almost like it's like a journey that you take on together, because also the interesting thing about humans is they're moment by moment a different person, day by day, week by week, month by month. They change, they evolve. There's an ups and downs and stuff like that. So what you're doing is you're saying, well, I'm going to explore all the ways that this human gets morphed and changed, and what makes them cry, what makes them excited, what makes them lonely, like the habits, how, like, when they form certain habits, how they feel when those habits are broken, like the stupid minute things that make everyday life. You're gonna be on that journey together, figuring that out, just the way we're trying to figure ourselves out when we're like optimizing these things about diet and health, so on. You're kind of doing this computation together, because neither person really understands themselves at all, and you're together both confused about each other, and you get to almost like a relationship is a chance to understand yourself and to understand another person, like, together. That process is somehow iterative.
You know, the dynamics, right? I mean, you're merging two nervous systems. This was once described to me very well by an ex-girlfriend who's truly brilliant. She's really brilliant. She said, you know, there's 4 arrows. This is maybe to an engineer or like so it makes sense. There's how you feel towards the other person.
Yes.
There's how they feel towards you. But then there's an arrow that comes back to you, which is how you feel about how they feel. And then they have an arrow of how they feel about how you feel, right? This is why if someone else is moody or somebody else is upset, there's one version of ourselves where we respond to that, or they respond to us. But there's another version where we respond to that, but it's also, there's a processing of what it means for us that they're behaving that way or feeling that way. And this, again, leads us back to that early attachment circuitry, because if a parent was stressed, the child's role is not to soothe the parent. In fact, healthy models of parenting say that children shouldn't actually know how their parents feel for like the first 8 years of their life. They're not supposed to be in that mindset of empathizing for the parent. This is often not the case. But maybe the cutoff isn't exactly 8, but you get the idea. So the dynamics of a relationship are where the learning is, because we learn how we react to other people reacting. It's not just a 2-arrow system. It's at least this 4-arrow thing. But there's also the element of nurturing, right? I mean, I think that going through life with somebody is so much better than going through it alone. And I'd never thought I'd make that statement.
So it wasn't always obvious to you?
No, it wasn't always obvious to me. And I mean, I've really enjoyed wonderful relationships, and some have been hard, and there's been certainly been a lot of growth. I'm on good terms with almost all my former girlfriends, and close with some enough that I know their spouses, and I'm close with their families. And but no, it wasn't. And I think that when people say relationship is hard, the only really hard part of a good relationship is just dealing with oneself and making sure that you're staying in that mode of caretaking. Because I do believe that if one is mainly focused on taking good care of the other person, provided they're also focused on taking good care of you to some extent, and we're good at taking care of ourselves, everybody flourishes. Everything gets better. But no, I don't think I experienced that until fairly recently.
What do you think is the secret to a successful relationship?
There isn't just one, but at least in the top 5 is master or at least be good at autonomic self-regulation. Know how to calm yourself down. Don't expect looking to anything external to soothe yourself is it puts you in a terrible position to be a caretaker of yourself and other people, right? So learn how to self-soothe, right? Learn how to calm your mind, steady your actions, steady your voice. There are tools to do that. We talk about on the podcast, but elsewhere, have that in place. I also think that if your main focus is on, you want to have good boundaries, et cetera, but on tending to the relationship, doing a little bit more than you think you ought to do. If everyone does that, it goes great. I mean, I'm sometimes so positively struck by how supported I feel, because for many years I was just kind of doing everything on my own. So any little thing, I'm like, oh my goodness, this feels huge. And also I think the dynamics have to be right. Let's be really honest. This is a little bit of a tricky topic, but there is a power dynamic in relationships. Sometimes, not all, but in some relationships, it works much better if one person leads and the other person follows. In other relationships, it's more mutuality, works best. People need to know what they need. And so knowing what you need and what you crave is really important. And then once you do that, you can create the relationship you want. I've seen that over and over again. And people are different. But I think that ultimately, I mean, right, there's the dopamine phase of a relationship, and then there's the serotonin phase, the kind of more mutuality, coziness, and sweetness. There's a great book about how to make sure that the dopamine component and the serotonin component, so to speak, go on forever. And it has to do with, when you first meet someone and you're attracted to them, you're essentially objectifying them. Meaning, not in the way people might think, you are not dependent on them for emotional stability or survival. As you get close with somebody, you really come to depend on them, and then you tend to objectify them less. And so this book, the book is, the name is kind of corny, but it's written by an analyst again. It's called Can Love Last? And it's a book about how really good, strong relationships are the consequence of people constantly moving through this dependency objectification dynamic. And I use those words in the true, the psychological sense, not in the way they're typically thrown around nowadays. So the idea, in some cultures, men and women will only touch for 2 weeks out of the month. And then for the other 2 weeks, the excitement and the sensuality and the sexuality is very heightened. And then they go back to this kind of distancing. Now, I don't think that's feasible for most people, but if you look statistically, those relationships tend to last a very long time with at least reported mutual feelings of intense attraction for many, many, many decades. So human beings need to learn how to at least understand and control these dynamics. And there's a lot of divorce, there's a lot of cheating, there's a lot of stuff out there. It'd be great if people could resolve some of this stuff inside of the relationship, in my opinion.
Yeah, and this kind of intense attraction. There's actually one of the poems that Carl Desroth introduced me to. I think it's Two English Poems is the name. But one of the things I find myself for prolonged periods being attracted to is like you notice some kind of magic and you keep wanting to dig to the depths of that magic.
You mean to really know that person?
To really deeply know a person deeply, yeah. You notice something early on.
Sure.
I don't know what that is, but you just notice something special and you want to keep pulling at that thread and you never really do.
Well, you also have to be careful. I get a lot of questions from guys. You have to be careful the questions you ask in a relationship too. You have to make sure you really want that information. And it's not just about people's past, right? If you ask somebody how they really feel about something about you and they tell you, that may be soothing. It may be intensely stressful. You have to be, here's one thing I know for sure. For a relationship to work, you have to be brave. You can't go in there fully protected. And yet you also can't go in there with no boundaries because you'll end up beat up. What's that quote? If you want to be a warrior, prepare to get hurt. If you want to be an explorer, prepare to get lost. And if you want to be both, and if you become a lover, prepare to be both or something like that. I forget. This is one of these Instagram type things that you see passing by and you go, oh, that's pretty true. Love's scary because It takes us back to that primitive circuitry that is as primitive and basic as hunger, thirst, the desire for heat when we're cold, the desire for cold when we're overly warm. It's dynorphin. I mean, when somebody leaves, like when somebody you were attached to leaves by death or by decision, or you're forced apart, the dynorphin release is massive. It is true discomfort. People feel anxiety and discomfort. And moving through that is the hell of a process. I mean, if I knew how to best break up at a neurological level, or if you could just plug yourself into a wall and reset, I mean, I'd do that episode tomorrow, but we don't have that knowledge.
No, come on. I think we've covered this before, and it's even been memified. I think losing love is part of the magic of love. It means you've felt something.
I agree, but at some point, like if you've done it enough times, life is finite. It is beautiful to see these couples that seem very much in love, despite having been together many years.
Yeah, the way they look at each other.
Yeah,
they still see the magic.
Yeah, and they'll say we got lucky, or it's been hard, or this and that. I think external conditions being a little tougher is helpful for a couple.
Hardship.
I do, yeah. Because I think that you rally, you bond with people. Being obviously you want to survive those conditions, but I do. I think that
Bonnie and Clyde. So
they were a little
a little too much. Well, a little too much.
They were sociopaths, but when two sociopaths find
one can make you do crazy things.
Normally, it's interesting. Normally, sociopaths don't team up because they manipulate each other. Sociopaths, sadly, are usually only interested in manipulating the highly pliable or unsuspecting. But when romantic attraction is woven in, then it gets really diabolical.
Any advice on finding the love of your life, of my life? This is why Lex is single response. Why? Any advice?
Yeah, actually, this comes from a friend of mine who's in a really excellent marriage with great kids and family and high demand life. It's a decision. Like at some point, you just prioritize it as, okay, I'm going to make this happen one way or another. And you don't force the discovery of that person. But I mean, I've occasionally said, hey, I think you should meet this person or that person. And well, it wasn't, maybe my judgment might have been off, but the timing wasn't right or something. But I think that, it's a decision. And it also has to do with life structure. I mean, there were years. So when I was in graduate school, I didn't want a girlfriend. I just wanted to be in lab. And I had romantic dating interests, but I wasn't going to meet them through a committed, live together situation. It wasn't where I was at. And as a postdoc, things are a little different, et cetera, et cetera. So, but at some point, it's sort of like, what do I want my daily routine to look like? Because ultimately, a relationship, however one structures it, is going to be part of your daily routine. So at the point where you're like, I'd really love to wake up next to somebody and do blank and blank together. And then I'd love to work, and then we meet for dinner, and then we, take the dog for a walk or take kids out or whatever it happens to be, take a trip and do it. One has to be in the mindset of wanting to do couple-like things.
Yeah.
People, and a lot of people don't think about it that way. They either fall into something or they don't see the benefits of coupling up. I think that the pandemic tuned people's awareness to the fact that some things are indeed easier on your own. It depends on finances, et cetera, et cetera. But a lot of things are made better done with other people.
100%. But I was very deliberately, it's an interesting way to put it. Like, what do you want your day to look like? I think what do you want your day to look like? What do you want your life to be? I was very deliberately always, first of all, happy to be alone, like a conscious thinking. I know a lot of friends who are just unable to be alone. I'm able to be alone, but I'm much happier with another person. Like I'm able to share joy with other humans.
I look forward to the day that our kids are rolling jujitsu and my kids are, hanging out with your kids. And if that notion sounds even remotely interesting, then and fun, then it's sort of like you kind of backpedal from that and you go, well, what has to happen?
How do you get there?
How do you know, it's very
Reverse
strategic.
engineer and think from first principles about love. Andrew, thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being an amazing human being who's so inspiring to so many people for constantly. I told this to Carl, like one of the things that was really refreshing about you is that you, when I tell you an idea, when I tell you a thought, when I tell you something, you don't shut it down as a first step. I was saying that that's common in the scientific community. That's common in people around you. You're seeing what's the goal there. You get excited. You get excited together, and that's how you can really have a great friendship and a great stuff together. So I'm deeply grateful for that, and just for connecting so many interesting people together. You're doing an amazing job, man, and thank you for existing. Thank you for being you. Thank you for talking today. And next time I'll see you in the sauna. And that's Beth.
Well, I want to say several things. First of all, thank you for having me on again. It's an honor and a pleasure. I don't say that formally. I really, truly mean it. The Huberman Lab podcast, as I always say, only exists because you gave me the suggestion, and I'm so grateful that you did. So thank you. And for doing what you do. Like you are brave, and you were first man in, and you're just continue to do it. Just whatever, as my postdoc advisor used to say, whatever you're doing, just keep going. And then in terms of our friendship, I mean, I think and if you don't, I'm going to just keep telling you anyway by text and in person. You're an amazing friend. There's deep trust. There's immense respect, and I love you, brother.
I love you too, man. We did it.